It's good, man. How
Okay.
are you?
I'm all right. I'm all right.
You got
How
a
was the
little
movie?
sunburn? What happened to your face there?
Oh no, dude, I've had this. This is a golf wound
Mm.
from being in the sun too much. So I have like
Oh,
a sun spot. I've had it for like 2 years, dude. And
it's
so every now and then when I'm in,
okay.
yeah, it's been there. But when it gets like really like if I'm out in the sun a lot, and in the summer it gets really red, and then when I dry off, sometimes I'll like scratch it and it'll open up and it'll bleed for a little bit. It's fun times.
I'm probably just used to looking into your eyes. So
Okay.
sorry, I got to get one of those in
All
before we actually start because once we
all
start, I
right.
can't do that.
Why not? I mean, you can.
I mean, I could. You're right. You're right. It's
I
my
might
show. I
I
can do
might
whatever I
leave.
want.
That's real. That is
Kinda.
real, my man.
Welcome to Submerge Life. This is where we are talking with people, seeing how they are submerging into life and listening to their journey to get there. And today I have one of my best friends, Mr. Matt Fabrizio. This guy is doing a whole lot of things, so we're going to get into it. Hello, Matt. How are you?
How's it going, brother? How are you?
Good, good, good. Let's
Excellent.
just be transparent. This is round two because
That's
the
real.
first time we
Hmm.
recorded, I didn't have the settings correct, so everything got deleted. So we are going
It was
round
very
two.
sad.
It was
Hey,
because it
that's all
was a
right.
good conversation, and I like authenticity, and there is a lot of authenticity there, and a lot of good things. So let's just get into the show. Let's talk about it. Before we get into your story and what you're doing today, let's talk about the merch launch. Now, first off, I usually go through my boy Z Tops. So if anybody needs t-shirts in bulk, he does an amazing job. I love what he does. But this time around, I don't have a whole lot of funds. We can't buy in bulk, and I don't have the infrastructure set up to mail out to do my own fulfillment yet. So if you guys need t-shirts done, go to Z Tops. Just search Instagram and Facebook. I got to give him the shout out because he's done such a great job in all the t-shirts that I've done. And he does t-shirts and stickers and decals and all that. All right. So, Bud, we are launching the t-shirt or actually a couple t-shirts, a whole, some merch. And this is going to benefit you and the work that you're doing, you and your wife. So let's
Yeah.
go. Ladies and gentlemen, we are introducing Broke with a Smile. We have two, not one, but two t-shirts
That's what's
available
up.
along with a tumbler and some stickers and a mug. So if you guys are interested, just go to submergelife.com. There will be a link, and then you can go there. So, um, Broke with a Smile. Why was that picked, I guess? Well, I mean, I'm the one who picked it, but that came from you. I mean, that's a tagline that has been with you for a little while. How did that come about?
Yeah. Well, that was that night we were hanging out at Luke's house. We were playing poker. I think we were still waiting for Trent, and you guys were talking about like taglines and stuff. And you know me, I'm like technologically illiterate and social media illiterate, and don't really do any of those things. I didn't even know taglines were a thing. This was a couple years ago. And you guys were just basically saying, "Oh, it's like a short sentence that kind of sums you up." And so you guys asked me, "So, like, if you were to make a tagline, like, what would you say?" And I sat there for a couple seconds and was like, broke with a smile. And you guys both really liked it and thought it was really good. At the time, I definitely was broke,
Yeah.
and had a smile. So I was like, yeah, that's kind of what it was. I've spent a roller coaster in my life in terms of financial security. I've
Hmm.
had lots of money at times
Yeah.
and no money at times. And at that moment in time, I had none, but was just had a lot of joy in life. And so Broke with a Smile was born.
Nice. Now, at the bottom of this, I did add another little line. It says Ramblings of a Crazy Man. Uh,
Hmm.
can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, Ramblings of a Crazy Man is just a thought or an idea that I've had for quite a while, even before I was walking with Jesus. I just have a lot of thoughts in my head, and I started putting them out in a book a very scattered book, which I actually have been adding to at times, not consistently. But the name of the book is called Ramblings of a Crazy Man, and just is just my own thoughts and like just very different thoughts. One of the chapters in there is like the problem with the world is not enough people use turnouts. People not using turnouts on the mountains is like one of like a pet peeve of mine, but it's basically that idea that like people get so caught up in themselves that they don't want to take the time that, you know, costs them 1 minute to allow other people to, you know, in that situation to move past them. And they're like, oh, they can just deal with it. And so we as people, myself included, we a lot of times will force others or make others deal with our own stuff because we are too self-involved and self-centered to take the time to allow others to go by. And so there's that and just other thoughts like that. And as my relationship with God has grown and increased, some of those thoughts of Ramblings of a Crazy Man have shifted in terms of what it looks like. And I mean, the thoughts and the ideas are the same, but the heart behind it and the not solution, because, you know, but that has changed to more Christ-centered. But yeah, that's where Ramblings of a Crazy Man came from.
Well, I can't wait to read it. Hopefully you'll finish it before I die. That would be great.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe
that would be, dude. That's if we were betting on that in Vegas, the odds would be pretty even, dude. It would be pretty even. You know me and like having thoughts and ideas and actually like, you know, following through on them to completion. You know,
I mean, we're all there. You know, broke with a smile. I actually started working on this a couple years ago, and I don't remember if I ever showed you anything. And then when I asked you to be on, I'm like, why don't we do that? Because one of the things that I want to do with Submerge Life is to help people raise funds for whatever that they're working on, if they're a missionary or a nonprofit, and to team up with them. And since we already had this going, I'm like, okay, I gotten a little bit better on the online thing and designing shirts for online. So I was like, let's go for it. Why not? Even with Submerge Life, I mean, I looked back at an old video that this is my 4th attempt at some sort of a podcast. All right. In 10 years, something like that, 10, 12 years. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've had 4 premiere episodes. And now I have a episode 2, which is a step. And so I totally understand, you know, procrastination and just taking your time, put it in the back burner. And now here we are. And I know that you're going to get this book done. I'll probably remind you, especially, you know, when we do a 2nd or 3rd shirt, then I'll be like, hey, Ramblings of a Crazy Man. Let's go. People are tired of buying shirts. I appreciate it. They want to buy a book. I definitely need the accountability. They want to buy a book. I mean, it is my thought, so I don't know if I would recommend anybody reading them. Like, it's hard enough having them in my own head. I don't necessarily need them in anybody else's. But you know, I'm not saying that I'm not saying I'm gonna read it, but I'm gonna at least buy it to support you. You know how many books I've purchased, and you've seen them. Like, we lived with each other. You've seen some of the books that I put. I'm like, I don't know, I've never read that. I just bought it, and like I had to give them away at a yard sale because like I'm never gonna read this. So I'm not saying I wouldn't read it. Maybe I would. At least a couple pages. Put it in the restroom. We go. All right, so let's get on with your story and your journey of all of this. And right now you are an urban missionary, or you're right, and you're working towards that and getting self-funded so that you can really dive into that. Just recently got married about 7 months ago. Your life is good. I mean, good in the perspective of how you look at it on the outside. There's a lot of, I'm sure, a whole lot of baggage from the past that you still have to work through. So let's talk about this journey on how you got here, because it is a great journey. And I think that more people should hear it, especially if they're struggling with the same things. I remember you saying that in 2000, well, before we get there, describe 3 words that would represent you from 2016, because 2016 was an important year. How would you, like, who was Matt in 2016? Yeah, 2016, as I've said before, is probably the worst year of my life. Like, looking back, I mean, great in what it ended up leading to. But at the time, I would say
lost, empty, and incredibly intoxicated would probably be the three words that I would use to describe. I mean, there's a lot of other words that I could use. They might not be appropriate for the purpose of the show, but you know,
it's my show. I'll just bleep it out. So it's like,
it was, you know, it wasn't good. That's for sure. I was completely empty, no direction, very little hope.
Okay. So the three words we've got,
fill myself with stuff.
We've got lost, intoxicated, and what was the third one? Hopeless?
Empty.
Hopeless
works too. Hopeless works too.
And I remember you describing 2016, a year where you do not remember ever being sober, right? That's the culmination of everything. So a couple years later, Matt Fabrizio, what are three words that describe you today?
Found, full, or at least being filled, and sober. for the most part.
Yeah. Which, you know, we're gonna have to get together and celebrate this a little bit. So not a lot of people don't think. Yeah, I know. Like some enchiladas or something, and a lot of water. All right.
I literally just had those for lunch.
Oh,
they were good.
Hungry. All right. So 2016, crazy year. Don't remember a day being sober. Obviously, you didn't just wake up and be like, I'm going to be drunk every single day this year. It all came from somewhere. Talk to me about that story. Like, where did it start? If you can remember all those things.
Yeah. So, you know, I grew up going, like, I went to church on my own as a kid. I started going to youth groups with my friends and stuff, and knew of Jesus and would have said at the time that I had a relationship with Jesus. But most of my relationship with Christ was selfish, in the sense that I loved Jesus for me, because he did things for me. And being a Christian at that time was kind of popular, and you had, you know, WWJD bracelets, and, you know, so I had a variety of different colors and all of that stuff. And it was cool to be a Christian. And so I knew of Jesus. I knew the right answers at Bible study and youth group, Jesus, obviously, but just all of that type of stuff. And then after I graduated high school, I went off to college, and being a Christian just was not as cool anymore. Life got hard, and I wasn't finding the superficial easiness of being a Christian. And so, dropped my camera. That was fun. And so, oh no.
You're here. I see you. Ah, you're frozen.
That's fun. And okay, really sorry about that. Sorry,
that's
everybody.
Okay. In post, I will correct that. You know, on IGTV, those who are watching, they're gonna get the real. In post, I'm just gonna.
It's real. It's real. You know, stuff like that happens.
That's kind of your life, right? You're going along, and then everything just collapsed.
Actually, you know what? That's real. And so being a Christian just wasn't what it was. I wasn't finding the ease and the good with it. Things started happening in life that I was starting to feel empty, depressed, struggling with things that I had never really struggled with. And so I started at like 20 years old, 21 years old, started to turn to other things to fill me, substances, women, you know, validation from others, needing validation from others, all that type of stuff. And so that started in my young 20s, and then it just gradually progressed over time. And I just became worse and worse and worse. And so 2016 was really probably the culmination of, you know, 15 years, maybe a little bit less, a little bit more, I don't know, of just running as far as I could away from God. Like, I was actually at Fresno Pacific when my relationship with God stopped. I thought that I was going to go into ministry. I was a psych major and a contemporary Christian ministry major, and just really wanted to do what I wanted without any accountability. And so I started to run from God and ran as fast and as far as I could, thinking that that was a possibility. And so 2016, I got to 2016, had been suppressing hurt and pain, feelings and fears of inadequacy, and just low self-worth. And so at the beginning of 2016, I entered into a relationship with a person that I was technically their boss. That did not end well. Do not recommend that. that was not the right choice. And then after that, just kind of super spiraled down, and I started to become more and more drunk, using more and more substances, gambling all the time. Reconnected with a friend who was also kind of in a similar spot. We were partying all together all the time.
Yeah.
That friend who I've known since I was 4, love him to death. He's my boy. But he lost his mom in 2016, and so that just became another rallying point to incredible inebriation and drunken stupor. And so it just, it wasn't really a specific thing as much as it was just the culmination of a lifestyle and an adult lifetime of suppressing emotion. I mean, you know me, I do not like feelings. My wife would second that. Do not like them, don't want them. They're real. I do feel them in spite of what some people might think. I do feel them, and I try not to, which is what I was doing with, all of the different things I was using to try to not feel them. And so, it kind of just went from that. And it was pretty hopeless, because the more I used, the more I drank, the more drugs I did, the more I gambled, the more empty that I felt. And so I needed more and more every time. Did some things that I'm not proud of that year that created some shame, like a lot of shame, more so than I mean, I had shame already, but much more so than that. And so, it was probably, it was things like that. It was a gradual build to a really, really fast fall.
Yeah. And one thing that we really didn't touch on last time, and I kind of want to touch on a little bit, is the gambling side. Like that provided a lot of income, because you were good at it, right? So that just helped you stay in that moment. I mean, is that where you got all the money to do everything?
Absolutely. So I would have nights where, I played poker, still do at times with friends, not anything crazy like I used to do, but it wasn't uncommon for me to have a couple grand in my wallet on any given night. I could go play cards. I would win, $1,000 and then go to the bar and buy everybody a drink and have like a $600 bar tab, things like that. So it just really fed a lifestyle. I wasn't saving it or using it for anything of worth or value, but more of just a way to continue to party. And it lasted for quite a while, and I partied really hard. And then when I stopped winning as much, and I took a string of in poker, we call them bad beats, or, just it wasn't as profitable. My lifestyle didn't change. And so that created a lot of debt. I remember I used to use, those like payday loans. Like I would literally, I think at one point I literally had like 6 payday loans, like different places out. And so I would like use one to be able to go play. I would lose and get another one, and then I'd have to use others to pay the other one back. It was just bad, bro. It was just
this vicious cycle that just went faster and faster, and then more and more. So was there any point, if you remember, any time in 2016 where it should have been a wake-up call? And I'm sure there's probably more before that, but were there some wake-up calls that, you look back, you're like, hey, I should have woke up at that moment? Like, what happened?
Yeah, I mean, so a couple of them. I mean, I've had several throughout my life that I'm really good at ignoring things, pretending that they're not there. But one of them I remember we talked about last time. It was a particular day I was hanging out with my buddy. We'd been on a bender, drinking, doing some other things for a while. Woke up one morning and I was in Fresno. I had to go to Visalia to I was living in Visalia at the time, and had to go there and let the dogs out, feed them, and then take them to my mom's in Dinuba. And so he and his sister went with me, and obviously we still did not look sober by any means. We'd been drinking all night. Got to Visalia, got to Dinuba. My mom could tell that something was wrong. She could just see. She looked worried. She sent me a text asking me if I was okay, stuff like that. Went back to my buddy's house and continued to party, and then fell asleep on his couch and missed a bunch of calls from my sister and from my mom. And there was a friend of ours that ended up coming over to that house, and like we were both passed out on the couch, and they walked in and was like, "Have you guys been smoking the coke?" And it was like, oh dang, like this friend got that from somewhere. And so like this, and that's not what was happening at that time. But it was like, man, this is what's being said. This is the fear that people that love me are having. And I just ignored it. I had some moments of really deep depression. We've talked about, I've struggled with that on and off throughout my adult life. And At various times, I've thought about suicide, never really actively thinking about
Hmm.
doing it, but 2016 was definitely a year where that was potential of doing it. And I never really knew how because I never wanted to, if I was going to do that, I didn't want to do it in a way that was going to destroy my mom. I mean, obviously my mom was going to be devastated if I died. So it's not like
Yeah,
I could
yeah,
have
yeah, yeah,
spared that, but I
yeah.
had a mindset of like, it needs to look accidental. And so part of that was just the lifestyle in general and the drinking and the
Okay.
drugs and all of that stuff. Like I was at a place where had I gone to sleep and not woken up, I would have been fine with that.
Yeah.
But one day in particular, it was rough. And I remember I used to go for drives way back when gas wasn't ridiculous. But this was a particularly bad day. And I remember I went on a drive because I used to love to go drive up in the mountains. And I was sitting up in the mountains and I literally was like, maybe I can just drive my car off of the mountain
Right.
somehow, and so that it looks like a freak accident. And so that was in my head. And then I got a text. I believe it was from my sister asking me a question. And for whatever reason, I looked at it and it kind of changed my mindset at that moment and
Mm.
drove back down the mountain and yeah, I'm really, really happy and grateful for that text. It's funny. I met up with a buddy last night and we were talking, and I've never talked to him about this, and he's not a believer, but he was asking me some questions about
Okay.
my life change. And I actually had a really cool opportunity to share the gospel. And I told him this story that I just told you, and he had never heard it before. And it was interesting seeing like his face. He's like, dude, I would have been devastated, bro. Like, and I was like, yeah, like I get that. That's just, that's where
Yeah.
I was. And that should have been a moment where I went, dude, you're not okay. Right. Like I'm very
Right.
prideful and arrogant. So I want to tell myself
Yeah.
I'm okay. And so even then it was like, yeah, that was bad, but I'll be fine. And so like, I didn't stop then. Like that wasn't like a day I drove down the mountain and was like, I need to change something, or something in my life
Hmm.
needs to change.
Yeah.
That wasn't it. That moment finally came when I was thinking about this, and I left this out last time too, but I was house sitting for she's like my sister. And I was house sitting for her and her husband, and they had given me one rule while I was house sitting, and I broke that rule. And they weren't like, they were really angry, but still really gracious to me. And like, I think
Yeah.
back now, like at that time, and like, I still struggle with shame because like they were so good to me and I just completely took advantage of it. And it was really after that moment that I started to go, I had crossed a line with an individual that I didn't think I would ever cross, and
Hmm.
adultery came into play, and it was like, all right, I need to be better.
Yeah.
I need
Yeah.
to make better choices. And so I decided that I was going to stop drinking and I wasn't going to sleep with women and I wasn't going to do drugs for at least 6 months. Let's get our head right for 6 months, and then
Right.
we'll be good. And like, no, you won't.
Right.
You'll just fall back into it. Well, anyways, 3 days later, I was at a bar, so it was super super effective.
Yeah.
Obviously worked. Actually, 3 days later, I was at a bar after losing a bunch of money at a casino.
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
And ended up at the bar because I was angry. And yeah, that's where God stepped in. And it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. And my life has not been the same since that point.
Okay. So at that bar, you decided it was time. Like, did you like wake up and be like, oh, you know what?
No, no, at
How?
that bar, yeah, so it was God behind the scenes. At that bar, I had decided that I was going to use my knowledge of Jesus to impress another individual, super scummy, and you know, wanted to be validated and all of those things.
Right.
And I had an in because I had a lot of knowledge of God, but didn't
Hmm.
know God. And so started going back to church as like well, if I do these things, then maybe God will reward me and I'll get the things that
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
in life. And so I was going to church by myself and started to remember the things I'd heard about Jesus. Started to want that again, and I did
Yeah.
go. Like I think I went a total of 60 days completely without having a single drink.
Hmm.
But my heart was still about me. Like it was still inwardly focused. It was still Matt. I mean, I still struggle with that today, but it was still
Right.
all
Right.
about me and what God could do for me. And so 2000, that was in 2017, beginning of
Right.
2017, and all of 2017 was really a process of ridding some of the symptomatic behavior that I had, like my drunkenness and drug use. And there was still definite elements of that, sleeping with people, like definite elements of that still creeped
Right.
into 2017. But it was a way of like, I thought I was stopping those things to earn favor from God, right?
Yeah.
And so my faith was still super shallow. But it was a beginning, and God used all of that to like actually call me back to himself. And that was like, I look back and I'm like, okay, I see what you were doing there. I was focused on that, as I tend to be,
Right. Right.
but super hyper focused on me, and
Yeah.
God used all of that.
Yeah, and that was a long process. I think sometimes we get
Mm-hmm.
into this thing, especially in Christianity, or turning away from something that you've been doing for a while, that it's just gonna turn off right away, right? It's just gonna stop. Like, and sometimes that's what's preached from the pulpit. They're like, okay, just say this prayer, and then you're gonna have no more desires tomorrow. You know, here's
Yeah, that's
two
bad
prayers,
theology.
and call me next week. And so it was a process. Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing it inside your story. It's definitely a process, and trying to get past some of these things and let them go and move on. Um, so you're going through that in 2017. I met you, I think it was June 2017, May or June
Yeah, May
for
or
the first
June,
time,
May or June.
right?
Yeah.
And then you started coming to Life Group. Well, we
Mm-hmm.
started a group. We're like, hey, let's get together, let's read some stuff. And then where did it go from there? By the end of 2017, going into 2018, what was, how different was it from the beginning of 2017?
Yeah, so at the beginning of 2017, when I first started going back to church, like like maybe you can relate, and I'm sure other people can relate.
Hmm.
Like you encounter God, and it's kind of warm and fuzzy. Like
Right.
you've been lost, you feel like you're found, and it's like, I love Jesus, he's amazing, it's awesome, and it's true, he's completely amazing, and I love my relationship with Christ and stuff. But then that the newness of it starts to fade, and if you don't have people that you're vulnerable with, and that you have to hold you accountable, that you're real with,
Right.
that you share like the deeper parts of the world has this way, the enemy is very good of kind of pulling you back. And so beginning of 2017, as I started going back to church, it was like, I'm on fire for Jesus.
That
The back
honeymoon
end of
stage,
2007,
what they
yeah,
call the honeymoon
exactly.
stage, right?
Yeah, straight up. The back end of 2017 was like, I love Jesus, but I'm also like still dealing with things inside that I've never wanted to look at. And
Right.
so what I thought Jesus would fix in that, he was just opening me up to the idea of like, dude, you have some things in you, which is why you do these other things. And so I'd started to do those other things again. Like I'd started to go to the bar again, to seek validation from other people. Not that I
Right.
necessarily wanted to hook up with anybody, but I wanted to know that I could in my
Yeah.
mind, because that somehow made me cool. And it
Yeah.
doesn't, it just makes me a tool. But I wanted that, right? And so the back end of 2017, I was now kind of living this double life. Like I would go to Life Group with you guys, and I would talk a good game. I would be able to contribute to conversations and stuff, while all the time, sitting at the bar and getting drunk, sometimes before Life Group or after Life Group, wanting to know if I could hook up with somebody. Not that I was going to. Still playing poker regularly,
Right.
not in a good place in that, stuff like that. And so just living this dual life of like, I want Jesus, but he's not really giving me everything that I thought he would, like it felt at the beginning. And so I need these other things to somewhat fulfill me, and starting to feel again more and more and more empty.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember a little bit of that, and it's like, yeah, you were good enough to be able to talk about everybody else and somewhat of yourself to some extent, because we did text and we did hang out at that point. And I knew some of the stuff that was going on, but obviously I didn't know everything, because there was a lot of things you were holding on to and that you were hiding, and be like, no, I don't want to address this. Or if I do want to address it, but I want to address it, being yourself, and nobody else needs to know that you're addressing it. And then,
Yep.
okay, so then your life continues to go into 2018. You jump
That's a good year.
into, yeah, you jump into a program at the church that
Yeah.
that we were both going to, the Well, right? What was it? Was Regeneration? What was
Yes.
that program?
Yeah, so Regeneration is a 12-step Christ-centered, biblically based recovery program that isn't like it's for anyone and everyone, but it is Christ-centered and it's
Right.
highly Christ-centered, not higher power centered, but like Jesus focused. It's really just a complete breaking down of the
Hmm.
gospel, which is why it's for anyone, because it's not just most people think of recovery of like,
Yeah.
alcohol, drugs, porn, sex, things like that. But it's like, so like for me, all of that stuff was symptomatic. And so it was an
Right.
opportunity for me to see the depths of me. God allowed, use that process to open me up to things inside of me that were really the issue, that I was using drugs and alcohol and gambling and women to mask the deeper roots. And so I didn't intend to go there. I found myself there by accident, again, in my own mind, going, that'll be good. If I do this, God will reward me
Right.
and I'm going to get the things that I want. And, at that time I was still pursuing a different relationship than the one that I have now. And thank God it's the one that I have now. Like beyond measure, God, that's God for you. You have this
Yeah.
one thought in your own head and God is like, dude, I got way better for you than that. And for me, that's what it was. And,
Right.
so still thinking that like, if I do this, then I will be good enough.
Right.
I will earn God's love. He will then reward me and give me the things that I want. And I'm really, really glad that I was as foolish as I was, because God did way more than that. He broke me first,
Yeah. Yeah.
allowed me to be broken in the most beautiful way. But I went into Region going, I'm all right. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not really drinking like I used to. I'm not
Right.
sleeping with women, and I'm kind of still gambling, but that's okay. It's not that big of a deal. It's just poker. It's like the stock market. Like, God is okay with that. And I think I can do well here, and, justifying all of these other choices and decisions that I was making because I was better than I
Yeah.
had been. And God is like, dude, no, like, and we,
It,
it grew from there.
yeah. And it's, and all of us can relate to that. We feel like, okay, I'm doing better than I was a couple months ago. So then you just relax and be like, okay, this is fine. This is fine. But then something happened,
Yeah,
right?
something happened.
I think it was
Yeah.
the week later or 2 weeks later on a Tuesday
One week.
night, one
One
week
week on a
later,
Tuesday. On a Tuesday.
we were talking regularly, and you were telling me some of your stuff, and you were struggling with things and trying to pull away from things and kept going back and pulling away. But then on this Tuesday night, I remember you calling me, and I'm like, okay, cool. Like we always talked. It was nothing out of the blue. You're like, okay, I'm gonna go do this tournament, go play some poker. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, just call me later. Let me know how you do. It's cool. Or call me tomorrow, whatever it was. And you live in Visalia, but you were playing in Fresno. And then like it seemed like it was like an hour later, you call back. And I look at my phone, I'm like, wow, that was quick. But it wasn't the same Matt that I had said goodbye to. It was a different Matt that
Yeah.
was broken and
Yeah.
crying and those words. So what happened in that hour? What happened in that night? What was going on in your mind, your thoughts, visually, what was happening?
Yeah. So I was living in Visalia, staying at my sister's, pretty much rent free, um, which is already shameful, right? Like, I'm a grown man who has to stay there. Like, I wasn't staying there. I mean, I love my sister, and she is super good to me and was super good to me at that time. Um, but that's not what I was chosen. I would have been in Fresno, but I couldn't be in Fresno because I couldn't afford it. I had left a job in August and cashed out all of my retirement and burned through all of that, which nobody knew. Nobody knew that I was burning through that, and that's what I was surviving, thinking that I was
Yeah,
gonna
I didn't
make a
even know,
living.
right? I
Yeah,
mean, we were
no,
going
no one did.
on lunches and
Hmm.
dinners, and
Hmm.
one week I would pay, the next time that we would go, you would pay, and there was never
Yeah.
any kind of like I didn't notice anything. I'm just like,
Hmm.
okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm good at that. I'm great at lying to people, including myself. Um, Not that that's a good gift to have, but so I'm not pretty much, I was straight up taking advantage of my sister. She was allowing me there to stay free. I wasn't, um, I wasn't giving her money really. I wasn't really doing things that I should have been doing. I wasn't taking advantage of the situation that she was giving me by like pursuing things and bettering my life. I was using it as a way to stay in my rut, to stay in the things that I was doing. And I had burned through all of that money and I was towards the end of it. And I went to play poker, which I shouldn't have. I could have given her money. I could have paid a bill. I could have done so many other things with this money, but instead, selfishly, as I have a tendency to do, I enjoyed playing poker or enjoy playing it. It makes me feel good as I'm playing. And so I wanted to feel good because I wasn't. And so I needed to, again, not feeling, I don't like how I'm feeling. So let me numb it. Took a bad beat and just God used that moment to completely break me. I had all of the shame and guilt just flood into me of all of the people that I've, for lack of a better word, used. All of the people that I have stepped on so that I could experience happiness at their expense, even if it was unintentional or when it was intentional. Thinking about the fact, like my sister had texted me right before that about something, and I was just broken because that's what started the moment of being broken. Just realizing, like, man, I could have done something to say thank you to her, but instead I took that moment to do something for myself. And just every feeling, every emotion, every hurt and pain and shame and guilt and all of that stuff just flooded into me at a moment, and I just couldn't pretend anymore. It was a great night. Like, I actually say that sincerely. Like, it's not a fun thing to experience at the moment, but like, I am absolutely grateful for desperation and grateful for you for being willing to pick up the phone on the other end and listen to a grown man cry for a couple hours, because God knows that would not be me. Like, like I would be 3 minutes into it, like, oh, what was that? Oh, I gotta go, man. Hey, dude, I'm so sorry. I'm praying for you. I'll check in with you later. And that wasn't your heart ever. It's never been your heart. The way you are with people is just amazing. And we got into a conversation and I spilled everything, all of the stuff that I had been holding in forever. And it was like the greatest exhalation I've ever felt. Like, just a, man,
just letting it out.
I was carrying a bunch of weight that I didn't have to carry, but I thought I did. And from that moment forward, God began a work in me that has led me down paths that I would love to say were easy and smooth and and fantastic, which is just not true. But as God has led me down a path that has been by far better. It's been awesome.
Yeah, that was a night, man. That wasn't just a night in changing for you, but also for me, because it stretched me, and I'm just like, okay, all right, let's go. Go ahead, just cry. And then you start. You opened up and you were talking about the finances, which you have hid from everybody, your faith and everything. And then we just started talking and texting like pretty much every single day, almost for a whole year. When I look back, I'm like, geez, all right. I didn't know that I could do that, stay on the phone so long and just listen to a crazy man ramble. Just to bring it back to,
that's real.
And
I can, dude, I'm good at talking, not so much listening, but really good at talking.
Well, I was going to say that later, that, I've known you for about 4 years, and that you've grown so much. And that is one of the areas that you've grown in, and where, like, I feel that freedom to talk to you now, and you will listen and you will hear and you will ask questions and engage.
Wait, what?
Which is so different from the Matt that I met, and that even to an extent the Matt that I lived with for a while. Right. And holy smokes, it's just been a great 4 years of seeing you change and become who you are.
I would like to take
today.
I would like to take credit for that, but it's not me. My nature is still Matt focused, right? Like, when I'm when my relationship with God is not priority, it's not the focus,
Yeah.
those things come out, right? Like my ability to listen to other people, including my wife, fracture. And I'm like, I want none of this right now. Like, this is not comfortable. This is not pleasurable for me. And me loves comfort and pleasure. And so I'm like, nah, I'm good. Right. So like, I would like to say that's me, but it's not. Like, it's truly is Christ in me, and it's his work in me and through me. And my bent is still, Paul says in Romans, like, I know nothing good dwells within me that is of my flesh, right?
Yeah.
The desire to do what is right, but not the ability to carry it out, right? Like that's me to a T. And I remember I was listening to a dude talk about that, a man that I completely look up to in terms of just the way that he walks out his faith. And he was saying, like, Paul's purpose wasn't like that there's not anything good in you. It's that the good in you is Christ. The flesh in you is not, right? And so my flesh nature is still the guy that wants to seek his own pleasure, is still the guy that wants to be validated by others, is still the guy that wants to be the center of things, is still the guy that wants to like be heard but not listen.
Yeah.
But by God's grace, like, I don't want that life. That life's not, that life is empty, makes me feel lost, and it creates a desire to numb, right? That's not the life that God has intended for me. And by his grace, I don't have a desire for that most of the time, which is awesome.
Yeah. That's another thing that we kind of push off. We think that once we start doing these good things, oh, it's going to be easy all the time. And it's like, no, it wasn't easy sitting on the phone talking and listening to you for hours, right? And same thing with you. Like,
what?
Shut up. Same thing with you. Like, it's not easy for you not to try and solve somebody's problem when they're talking to you and sharing their
because
stuff.
I know the answer.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know the answer.
Like it just, but we pretend that we do, or when we're trying to solve others, and it's like it doesn't happen. Those things still peak out. You're not going to be perfect 100% of the time. I know this year was crazy with COVID, and I didn't check up on a lot of people, right? So I used to be able to call and text, see how people are doing, and then when I became had to stay at home, it's like, oh, a couple months later, I realized, oh, I haven't been texting and calling people to see how they're doing, because I was thinking about me and how I'm doing, especially those people that live by themselves, that had no community and maybe had no job, and so anyway, it's something to just continue to remind yourself, like, hey, you watch out for those things, because you can still go back into those old habits. Anyhow, so let's move on with the story. We start talking. A couple months later, we go somewhere, or actually, no, I ask you a question on a Monday night, and then
Tuesday.
On a Tuesday.
It's always a Tuesday.
It's always a Tuesday. I asked you a question. What was that question?
Yeah, so I had gone on a tour of Fresno with you and Derek Riley, and listening to Artie from E&P at the time, and other people as we're going on this tour of Fresno, and listening to people talk about what they're doing in the different ministries that exist throughout Fresno. And there were several people talking about being, I didn't know it at the time that it was a thing, but like relocators or urban missionaries. So it was people moving into different neighborhoods in Fresno that they otherwise probably wouldn't live in, with the specific purpose of sharing the gospel in those neighborhoods and living out the calling that Christ had put on their life in those neighborhoods, similarly to as if you felt called overseas and you went and you lived in a village. Now, obviously it's in Fresno, so it's definitely different than a village, but the same idea in the sense that, like, no, we're going to focus on sharing Christ here. And I remember being like drawn to that and just thinking about it. And so we were eating dinner on a Tuesday. I was super frustrated with work, was still severely struggling financially, and didn't have a lot of hours, and didn't know what I wanted to do, and trying to figure stuff out, not knowing what was going to happen. And you're sitting there, and we're eating, and you're talking to me, and you ask me, so what do you think you want to do with work? And I believe you said afterwards that you thought that we were just talking about like my actual job. And I looked at you and I was like, dude, I don't know, man. Like, I feel like God has put this on my heart to like consider and to really look into being a relocator or an urban missionary, and moving into a neighborhood that would not necessarily be a neighborhood that I would think to move into for the purpose of sharing the gospel, having no idea how this would happen because I was broke. I mean, I was still living rent free at the time and not doing great things with my money and all of that stuff. And so that was on a Tuesday. You asked me that question, and then the next morning, went to my first ever men's breakfast at the Well with you, and we're sitting there at a table eating some really, really good food, and this dude gets up there and he's like, yeah, you know, my name's Joe White and I'm an urban missionary. And I went, oh, no, 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 no. I was just kidding, God. I was just kidding. God, it was a joke. Just kidding. We looked at each other and we both had that same look on our face, like, whoa, this really just happened. And so wanted to leave, tried to leave. Holy Spirit doing that thing where Holy Spirit, he's like, nope, you need to go talk to him. And so after attempts to trying to leave, realized like I can't, I have to go talk to Joe. And so I went up and I introduced myself to Joe, kind of told him this exact story right here, the small part of the story. He was like, man, that's insane. Like, that's really cool. He gave me his card. He was like, we should check us out, and gave me his card. And I went online later that afternoon, checked out their church, and saw that the worship leader for the church is a dude that I went to high school with, played water polo with, hadn't seen in a decade and a half minimum, and was like, okay, God. And so started going to neighborhood church that week. Started meeting with Joe and just talking about what this looked like, and have been in that process of really diving into submerging
into there you go
into this idea of what it looks like to live on mission in a particular neighborhood with a purpose of sharing Christ with my neighbors.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the Jackson neighborhood. And so just give a little bit more context on what is the Jackson neighborhood, like the makeup and
Yeah, so the Jackson neighborhood is a neighborhood in Fresno that is between First and Cedar, Tulare and Ventura. Ventura turns into Kings Canyon, but it's just west of Roosevelt High. Roosevelt High is probably a bookend of the neighborhood, and then the First Avenue is the other bookend, where the demographic is incredibly, what's the word that I'm looking for? It's a variety of people. You have Huntington Boulevard that runs through the middle of that neighborhood, and there's 144 homes on that street. Much more socioeconomically like advanced, or just in a good socioeconomic position, whereas the rest of the neighborhood is not necessarily in that boat. It's a higher crime neighborhood. It has one of the highest teen pregnancy rates of any neighborhood in the country. So just a lot of stuff going on in that neighborhood.
Yeah. And so what I like about neighborhood church is that a lot of the pastors, or most of them that are serving there, they live inside the neighborhood. Joe White, who's the pastor of the church, he lives in the neighborhood. He actually lives on a corner. I love driving by and going because he has a fire pit on the corner, not in the backyard, but he has it out in front on the corner so that he can invite the neighbors. Talk about the 3 by, was it the 9?
The My
3,
8.
Yeah.
My 8.
Yeah. My 8.
Yeah. So one of the ideas in the concepts of neighborhood church, it's not vastly different, but it's, loving your neighbor, but taking loving your neighbor to its literal definition of loving your neighbor. And so neighborhood church has this concept. It's called My 8, and probably not theirs. It's not a unique concept, but it's an intentional concept. It's where we believe that God has placed us strategically places, whether that's at work, where we live, where we shop, where we go to work out, for me, play golf, who I play golf with, whatever it may be, right? But that God has strategically placed us in these locations. And so as a person, as a neighbor, I have somebody that lives, or we have people that live, we have 3 houses in front of us, 3 houses behind us, and 1 to the left and 1 to the right. As a general rule, not all neighborhoods or houses look that way, but as a general rule, you have 3, 3 and 1, right? And so those 8 families, those 8 homes are an area of responsibility where you're going to be, or we're going to be intentional with loving those people, introducing ourselves to those people, inviting those people into our homes, if they're believers, edifying each other and building each other up. If they're non-believers, just sharing the good news of Jesus to them, not like you need to believe in Jesus. Not that that's not true, but like just showing what it
Right.
looks like to
And
follow Jesus, what the love of
right.
Christ looks like by our actions and the way that we live, not just practically. Practically is an awesome thing, and that's absolutely done there, where we're helping take care of practical needs of our neighbors, but also spiritual needs by being willing to pray with, whether there's somebody that wants prayer or not, but those types of things. And so it's really cool. It's this
Yeah.
idea that if I'm intentional about the person directly across from me, I don't have the ability to change anyone. I don't have the ability to change the world. I want to. I wish I could. I had
Right.
delusions of grandeur when I was younger, that I could say or do something so profound that people would be like, "Oh my goodness, that's amazing. You're totally right. Man, if we just did the same with, really the idea behind Ramblings of a Crazy Person was that it's like, I want people to read this and be like, dude, this dude's intelligent and so smart. Oh my goodness, we should just all listen to what he has to say. That's why I said originally at the beginning, it's kind of shifted. But
Yeah.
instead of that, going, no, I don't have that ability. I'm not the one that changes anyone. I can't change myself, but God can. That's what God does. And so I am going to be intentional with the person across from me, trusting and hoping that God is going to do a work in that. And as God does a work through me in that, that person might encounter the living God, develop a relationship with Christ that I can walk alongside them with. And in that moment, that person then takes that same idea and does it to the person next to them. And then you have this domino effect that grows exponentially. And that's how change happens. It doesn't happen
Right.
by the ability of one person, but it happens by being in, one person changing a bunch of people, as opposed to it's one person looking at another person going, you know what, I'm going to invest in you. And as I invest in you, you're then going to invest in somebody else. And as you invest in somebody else, you're going to have this growth that occurs because I or you decided to be intentional with one person. And that's
Right.
super cool, right? That's how actual effective change happens. It happens one person at a time, one neighbor at a time, one home at a time, one neighborhood at a time, one city at a time,
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
it may
Yeah.
be. And that's, and so that's the focus.
Yeah. So inside Neighborhood Church and they just focus on the Jackson neighborhood, and they're doing different initiatives and programs,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
serving us at the elementary school with Off the Front,
Mm-hmm.
the jobs program for the kids
Mm-hmm.
that are out there. Talk to me about some of those.
Yeah. Well, Off the Front is its own entity that goes to a
Right.
lot of different schools.
Mm-hmm.
Mike does a wonderful, an amazing
Yeah.
job with
Yeah.
that. Such a
Definitely.
cool program. But so Off the Front is a partner that goes to Jackson Elementary School. They also do a neighbors in Jackson invest in the students by being part
Mm-hmm.
of tutoring programs. And so they spend their afternoons volunteering to tutor kids in reading and literacy gains and all of that type of stuff. There's a thing called Neighborhood Jobs, which is just building like those little libraries or like serving trays. And so people that might have barriers to employment or have never had a job before can come and do this. They get paid for their work. They get paid for their sales when those things get sold. There's a nonprofit, which is the Jackson CDC, and the CDC is a community development corporation that just works on creating equity within a neighborhood, taking the assets. It's an asset-based idea. So you're going to take the
Mm-hmm.
assets of a neighborhood for the betterment of the neighborhood so that the people of the neighborhood can flourish. That's something that I'm doing right now as Joe is on sabbatical. Right. And so one of the things that we do with that is we have a thing called the Wilderness Program, which is a grant that was given to us and the Lowell CDC. And so in this partnership with the Lowell CDC, we take neighbors who want to go to different places in the mountains and in nature that they might not otherwise go to, just to experience new things. And it's an awesome opportunity to develop relationships. Not tomorrow, but the week from tomorrow, we're actually going to Bass Lake. We have a pontoon boat and some paddle boats and stuff. And so just going to take some people up there or paddle boards, just going to take some people up there and enjoy the time, develop relationships, allow people to experience things that they might not otherwise get to experience. It's all free of charge. We provide food and do all of that. There's also one of the other things is the Kings Canyon corridor. There's a transit-oriented development, which is basically like streets in Fresno and developments in Fresno look the way that they look for a very specific reason. And so in looking at that, the one that we're working on is creating business opportunities that can flourish in the neighborhood so people can stay. They don't have to go a bunch of other places that they can find the things that they need in their neighborhood. It creates opportunities for jobs in that community and all of that type of stuff. And so it's focusing on, it's a practical aspect of the mission, where we're focusing on the practical needs of the community for the flourishing and betterment of that community. And then we have a Sunday gathering where, you know, we're building the body up to go out and to share the good news of Christ to those around them. And not everybody that goes to neighborhood church lives in Jackson. I currently actually don't.
Right.
You know, Megan and I are looking at it. The market is not the best right now, but we will be moving into the neighborhood. Excited for that. And so, yeah, it's just, it's a really cool idea of church.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I love during COVID, somebody, Desmond had a connection with food, and they would just drop off food at the pastor's house, and they would on the street and then just distribute that, right? And this isn't really a wealthy neighborhood. You've got one street, which is Huntington Boulevard, which is pretty wealthy. You take that out, and it is not a wealthy neighborhood.
Yeah. No.
Right. So yeah, that's how you are submerging into life. And then you just got married 7 months ago.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I got married 7 months ago.
Who would have thought?
Not me.
Especially
God, apparently.
Dude,
bro. I didn't think a year ago.
Yeah, so it's so great to hear your story again and again and again, and have been able to be there for that change. You know, in our I don't know, in our pride or arrogance, we like to think, oh man, God put this person in my life so that I can, you know, listen to them talk forever. And honestly, like, He's put you in my life so that you can help change and form my life. Two, also, because I have been changed and transformed and pushed. I told the story before where it's like, I remember one time you needed some shoes. And I'm like, okay, I don't really have any shoes. I mean, I don't have any money to give this guy. And I have like 16 pairs of shoes. And there was one pair that fit, one pair that was going to fit. And it happened to be my favorite pair. And I'm like, okay, geez, what do I do? Like, let him have his holy shoes. He can still wear them, you know, contemplating that. And it's like, God continues to push. And it's like, I don't like using this word sacrifice because, you know, if I sacrifice my shoe, you know, it's like, I love that word, but I don't like using it in like, oh, well, you sacrificed your shoes for your friend. And it's like, well, no, had I kept them, then I sacrificed my friend so I can keep some shoes. And so it was like, nope, got to do it. And little by little during our time of friendship, God just like, hey, you don't need that stuff. You don't need this. And began to change my heart to where it's like, we had a fire that was near here and we had to evacuate. And I go to load up my car and it's like, I have my computer for work and a duffel bag. That's all I cared about. Where before.
That's the Matt life.
Before, yeah, I know, right? Before, you know, 5-10 years ago, it's like, no, I want to obtain all these things. I want to have, and my car would have been full with stuff as we're evacuating. But this time it was like, man, and that's something that I learned by God pushing me, being like, hey, so, you know, I gave you those shoes. They're my favorite shoes. And every time I look, I'm like, man, I wish I had those shoes back. No, I'm just kidding. I did it.
I still have them. You can have them.
I told you before, man.
I'm able to get my own shoes now. That's awesome.
Yeah, put them in a glass box when I die and put it right there by the casket. I'd be like, perfect. These are the shoes. But that was one of those things that was like, man, it just continued to move. And then seeing on how you lived, I mean, you moved in with me and you didn't have a bed, right? You lived with your sister, but you're transit. So you had a lot of your stuff in the car, which was golf clubs and clothes. And that was it.
That's it. I mean, that's all that's needed. Really.
And you were broke with a smile still. No matter what, you were still smiling. And that is definitely a lesson that I had learned and continue to learn today as I'm going through, you know, my stuff. Yeah, smile. Yeah. Like, it's cool. You don't need all that stuff. What you need God and love, and let's go.
Yeah, like I mean, it has nothing to do with me again, as it's God in my life, but like I can identify, not to the same degree because Paul's amazing, but like when Paul says in Philippians, like, you know, I've been I've had means and I've had nothing, but regardless, I've learned to be content in whatever circumstance. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And it's like that verse isn't for winning sporting events, by the way. It's not the context of that verse, but I've experienced that in my life. Like I've had lots of stuff. I've had things, I've had opportunities, I've had all of that. And I've been incredibly broke and pretty much, the term fancy homeless, like living out of my car and crashing on people's couches so I didn't have to drive back to Visalia or whatever that may be. And I've learned that regardless of where I'm at, like Jesus loves me. And if that's true, then there's literally nothing that can be taken. And, you've said that you learned a lot from me, and I appreciate that because I'm definitely good at helping people learn how to get by with nothing. Like I'm good at that. Like I could teach a class on that. That is a gifting God has given me, or at least a circumstance that I've been allowed to experience, but mostly by my own doing. But I've learned so much from you. I remember you talking to me about, the shoes and just getting rid of your stuff and things like that. And you really took it on, like feeling God calling you to like look at your stuff differently as things and being like, man, this is not my desire. Like I turned to drugs and to alcohol and to things like that, but you turned to buying stuff and to getting things. And you looked at it and you said, God wants something different. And you didn't punt on that. You listened to that and you gradually started to change. And I learned what that looks like from you. I also learned what it looks like to love others better than yourself and to live out. I'm going back to Philippians, but to have a heart that doesn't do things out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but looks at others as better than you and looking at their interests beyond their own. And I find that so cool. You love others really, really, really well in a way that is admirable and just incredibly encouraging. Like you look at other people and well, maybe sometimes your thought is like, oh crap, like not again, but your action and what you have eventually come to is like, how can I serve them? Like, how can I show them Christ? And I just think that's amazing. And so I'm just incredibly grateful for you, my man, and just excited for you in this idea of Submerge Life and the conversations you're going to get to have. I can see the joy inside of you with this. Like I can see that smile, and it's just amazing, man. So I'm excited for you.
It's only taken 10 years to do 4 premiere episodes. But
it took David was anointed by Samuel, and I think it took like 20 years before he ever became king. So you're fine. You're still 10 years earlier.
Thank you. Well, thank you for those words, man. It hasn't been an easy thing because, I still am selfish in nature inside. And there are definitely many times where I have dropped the ball, and I continue to drop the ball. But every day I'm trying to pick that back up and just keep going. But I'm so grateful for your friendship. I'm grateful that, we're doing this, and that, you get to be my first guest inside this format. And there is, when the episode that we recorded erased, I was like, oh shoot. I felt inside, I felt bad because I thought I had a few more people to record, but I wanted you to be the first. And I think that's
I'm humbled.
Probably why all right.
Oh, nope. No. Dude,
we're not doing this.
You do that. You listen to people cry. I do not, sir. That is not my gifting. We're going to leave that with you, not my gifting.
It was a bug that came in, but
yeah, that's fine. We'll leave it as a bug. No, I'm just kidding, bro.
It's been such a great journey with you, ups and downs. We've had a lot of good ups. We've had a lot of good downs. But seeing you grow, and now you're married, and I get to interview your wife, and I cannot wait because she has a journey, right? She has a journey that she's gone through. Oh, I can't wait till I get to that. Yeah, I cannot.
Yeah, she's like the strongest person I know. Don't tell her I said that though. She needs to, I have a rep to maintain in the way that I care and love people. It's not the like fluffy, I'm going to tell you super amazing words. Like that's not who I am. So don't let her know that I said that. I'm just kidding. She's awesome. She is awesome. I'm excited for other people to get to hear her story.
Yeah. I'm excited to launch my first merch line with you, where all the proceeds go to you. Broke with a Smile.
Well, neighborhood church,
correct. You're still looking for sponsors, right? Because that's how you're moving in there and staying sustained.
I'm a donor supported urban missionary.
Just like a missionary that goes out of the country, right? Like you're going
But I get to golf.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes.
So all of the links will be on submergelife.com. This is being recorded on IGTV right now. So if it is not up right now, it will be up by the end of the day. If you are watching this on a streaming on YouTube or one of the other streaming podcast channels, it should already be up. So go over there, click on the links. You know, if you have the heart to donate monthly to this guy or one time, do that. If you want to just buy a t-shirt, I'm not sure how long they'll be on there. We can do that. And I hope I'm really excited about this. I hope it works out because we can do more and I want to do more. Yeah. That's my heart, is to help people submerge into life on this financial, you know, sometimes I'm not always going to, you know, sell a t-shirt. I think in a couple of weeks, I'm going to help somebody launch this donation initiative where if they get so many clients, they're going to donate something to a nonprofit organization. It's like, let me help you launch that. So let's go. But anyhow,
awesome.
I am so thankful. Thank you for being on here again.
Hey,
and
it's cool. I talked to you twice, bro. It's fine. I love it.
You're going to have to talk to me again. So I'll
whoa,
text you later.
No, that's fine.
Thank you guys so much for watching. If you feel like somebody can get some knowledge from or some encouragement from this episode and from Matt's story, please share this. Share, like, subscribe, get this out there, because you know our journey is there to share and to encourage others and to remind them they're not alone. Like the quicker that you can start talking about it, I think that's when that process starts, right? What, you know, it happened when you just started opening up and being like, yo, I'm legit broke. You know, I have struggles inside this whole area. And then little by little, man, it's not going to happen overnight, but it took a couple of years, but just keep going, keep pushing, and let's go. So thank you so much, man. I'll try not to erase this episode.
Yeah, dude. Love you, brother. Thank you.
Love you too, man. Thank you, brother.
All right, bro. Bye.